We Could Have Tea Together. Chapter 2. A Miraculous Ladybug Fanfiction written and narrated by Mira Rose. Artwork by Yuki on Pixiv. If you haven't already, you can check out Yuki's Pixiv by using the link in the description box. Absolutely gorgeous art. Go give him a like, follow, love, share, all that good stuff. Now then, if you haven't already and you've made it to Chapter 2 after watching Chapter 1, link to Chapter 1 in the description if you haven't already. Don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and leave a comment. And if you aren't sure what to comment, put a first date. Now then, please enjoy We Could Have Tea Together, Chapter 2. Marinette Dupang Chang, 24 years of age. When Marinette gave Cat Noir an invitation for tea any time, she hadn't thought he'd take her up on it the next morning. "Cat?" she said, raising her eyebrows as she approached her storefront. Not only had he gotten here first thing in the morning, it was an hour before she opened. "Hey!" He raised a hand to wave, and she recognized his sheepish grin. She didn't have to point out how early it was. He knew it. "That better be for me," she said, fishing in her purse for her keys so she didn't have to show her expression. "I'm not one to show up unannounced without gifts." "Like yesterday?" Cat chuckled at her jest and held up a canister. "That's why I've got a tin, not a bag." "You think I'll like it more than 2 ounces? Something tells me apple hibiscus and raisins are right up your alley." She rolled her eyes and unlocked the door, holding it open behind her to invite him inside. "Hot or iced?" "Iced tea," he mocked. "It's a good thing we aren't English." His smirk grew wider. "You don't know that." "I wouldn't be surprised if you're a mutt." "Wow." He stretched his response, grin intact. "That's offensive to some, you know." "But I know you," she said without thinking it through. "You aren't." Cat nodded, setting the canister on her checkout counter. "You're right. I'm not. Still feeling good." "You're ridiculous, kitty." "You're the one who took in a stray cat." "How does me inviting a friend for tea imply I took you in?" "Oh, come on, Marinette. You grabbed my heart when you beat away those girls yesterday." "I didn't beat them," she called over her shoulder, grabbing a box off the shelf. "You mean what I know." "That's not how sentences work." "My, how the turntables." "So, iced tea or hot?" He laughed, not taking his eyes off her. "Both." "You're planning on working today?" "Huh?" "If you're going to stay long enough, then you'll need to earn your keep." "You need a model with perfect proportions?" He flexed his biceps in a "we can do it" pose and grinned. "I need a tall human." She gestured to the top shelf, then opened a cabinet under the register and grabbed a feather duster. "I trust you won't break anything while I put the kettle on?" His grin relaxed, his smile soft with a hint of intimacy. "Yeah, sure." Something about it all made her flush, and she retreated to her kitchenette. He's just a man. He didn't even know he was, at one point, her best friend. Her mother was right. Once you love someone, a part of you will always be in love with them. She popped open the canister, cranberry and cherry notes stirring up saliva as she tasted the tartness in the air. Okay. She'd brew a large pot for hot, and then slow brew a pitcher for cold in the fridge overnight. If he truly intended on spending the day here, she could ice what was left over in the pot. Keeping her ears open for a crash from the storefront, Marinette put the kettle on and measured out the tisane mix, chuckling at the name. Sweet tart. Did he like the joke of little sugar hearts in the mix that would dissolve in the tart cherry blend, or did he try it before learning the name? Either way, it suited him. This was exactly the kind of tisane she'd expect him to choose. An ill-timed thunk caught her ear, and she sighed, but made sure to set her timer before she went to check in on her companion. "Everything okay in here?" she asked, curling around the doorframe to see Cat Noir sitting on her checkout counter, hands laced with yarn. He looked up, his teeth sunken into his bottom lip as a dark hue spread across his cheeks. I found your yarn." "Did you unspin my sweater?" She crossed her arms, her mouth twisted up as she pressed herself up against the wall, leaning so smugly, he might guess she won the lottery instead of losing work. "Can I tell you after we drink a pot of hot tea?" "What, do you think I'd toss it on you?" "Of course not. You'd stain the yarn. You'd dip me in like a caramel apple." She couldn't restrain her laughter, and oh, it felt good. She'd missed this. She'd missed him. Come on now, before it gets cold. "About that." Cat held up his hands, another admission of guilt. "I'm in a bit of a..." He paused for dramatic effect. "Yawn." Marinette couldn't help but roll her eyes as her kitten stretched his face, inhaling loud enough she was sure it woke Tiki in the other room. Silly boy. Actually, no. Silly man. They were adults now. He was a man now, his boyish dimples creased into handsome lines and shoulders broader than she remembered. "What was your highlight today?" she asked, clearing off papers from the round, steel garden table serving as her breakfast nook in the kitchen. While the storefront was elegant, there was a reason Marinette didn't let her clients into the kitchen. "My highlight?" Cat echoed, free from twined temptation and instead opening the top cupboard to grab 2 cups. "Oh. He noticed her drag out the step stool yesterday and did it for her instead. The tea wasn't the only sweet thing in the room. In the last 24 hours, what was the best thing that happened?" "The best thing?" He ran a hand across his chin. "Well, it doesn't have to be the best thing. Just something that made you smile. But absence of a negative doesn't count." She pulled the infuser out of the pot. "What do you mean?" "Like, nobody got akumatized today isn't a highlight." "I'll fight you on that," he said, setting down the cups. "That is always a good day, even though it's been years since Hawkmoth." "You know what I mean." She thinned her lips in a mock scowl, and he chuckled before taking a seat not quite across, but not quite next to her. "So, highlight?" 24 hours, right? "Yeah." "Easy. Tea. With you." She gave him a gentle shove before pouring a cup. "Aw, shucks," she said, sliding him the tisane. "Yours?" She pursed her lips as she poured red for herself and debated how honest she should be. "Seeing you this morning," she confessed. Cat choked on his first sip. "Really?" he asked, trying to catch the dribble from his chin with his free hand. "I mean, tea with you was a highlight for me, of course, but sharing the same highlight is boring, don't you think?" "So it wasn't chasing those girls out yesterday?" he chided. "No, but seeing you squished under the display with pleading eyes is a close second." "Listen, I can pull off any look. Guaranteed. You really gave up the opportunity to say perfectly, didn't ya? Kat's face dropped, and he turned to his hands, counting missed opportunities off one by one. Perfectly, on purpose? She let him mutter to himself as she finished off her cup like a shot and poured another. Surely it was the tea making the room warm, and not her head filling with thoughts of him like a leaking tap. Mom was right. Once you truly love someone, part of you always will. So, what's Paris's favorite hero up to these days? Something flickered behind his eyes, but he covered it up with a smile with such a quick breath, Marinette had to guess if it were her eyes playing tricks on her. Living my best cool cat life. Still getting mobbed by fangirls, I see. Yes, well, everything comes at a price. And here I thought the best people in life are free. She took a sip, batting her lashes at him over the rim of the cup, and expected him to laugh in return. Instead, he choked a second time and got up to grab a napkin. Sorry. Kat coughed into the sink. Got your own tongue? Something like that. Now, she felt self-conscious over her choices. Surely he didn't think she was flirting with him. As if. Not that she wouldn't mind a bit of back and forth banter, but she hadn't thought he'd think of her as just another girl seeking attention. You good? She asked, leaning into her chair, trying to look nonchalant instead of if she remembered to put on blush today. Even just the thought of flirting with him, which she certainly hadn't done, was enough to make her self-conscious. Fine, just remembered something, is all. Ladybug? She meant it in earnest. It wouldn't be surprising if he was reminded of his partner because of her mannerisms, for obvious reasons. Kat twirled around to look at her, eyes wide with a napkin at his mouth. Ladybug? He echoed, his voice as pale as his face. Or not, she said, refilling her half-full cup as an excuse to look away. There wouldn't ever be a day Marinette didn't feel guilty about leaving her partner behind. Actually, he sucked in a breath, refolded the cloth napkin, then sighed. Kind of, yeah. Kind of, yeah? She repeated, her heart unsure what tempo to drive her emotions at. It might just be because I knew the two of you at the same time is all. If only he knew that he'd known once. Before she learned how to play with memories like Bunnix played through time. You miss her? Yeah. Kat sat down and tried to take a sip a third time. It must be the charm, because he didn't choke for the first time all day. More than I'll ever know. What would you do if you found her again? He smiled at the bottom of his cup, lined with bits of Tizan that made it through the infuser. You already asked me that. I meant after the first day. Kat shot a sideways glance, sighed, then refilled his cup. You assumed she'd stay for longer than a day. You think she would leave so soon? He chewed on his bottom lip, a mannerism she'd forgotten he had, and sighed again. I used to think I knew her better than anyone. Now, I don't think I'd recognize her even if we shared a meal together. The irony struck a nerve, and Marinette had to set down her cup. She loves you, Kat. Even if you don't get to see her, I'm sure she checks in on you. Eyebrows raised, Kat stared at her slack-jawed. She wasn't sure if it was because of her words or her tone. Either way, she held eye contact like a match to a flame. You think? He managed. You stay in the public eye enough that she could if she wanted to. that is. Marinette turned her attention back to the pot, finishing the last pour into her cup and taking a swing. I try to. Yeah. It was her turn to choke and dribble on the brew. It's on purpose? She all but exclaimed. He leaned over and pressed the clean side of his napkin to her chin. I might like attention, princess, but I like Ladybug much, much more. Marinette felt her face burn and told herself it was the gesture, not the words. It'd been a bit since she'd been on a good date, and this felt like one. All this time I thought you were being a sparkling hero as a beacon of hope and happiness. I mean, yeah, sure, I like making people's day, but... He licked his lips before raising his cup. If Ladybug ever decides to find me, I want to make sure she knows where to look. A small part of her crinkled inside, a paper of her perfectly laid out plan tossed aside. Perhaps she will. Someday. Cat didn't say anything in response, taking in the brew instead of letting out words. Someday, he breathed, barely loud enough to catch her ear, but it sounded more like a prayer than a reply. She's proud of you, Cat. Marinette wasn't sure what part of her pulled that out of her, but she meant it. Cat smiled in response, but, like the tea in the bottom of her cup, it wasn't as warm as when he first walked into this kitchen. You know something I don't? Oh, come on, kitty. You didn't come here for melancholy, did you? Save it for the iced tea. She reached over and gave him a nudge. But absolutely. If I'm proud of you, then she is too. I promise. A grin split across his face. A change so sudden it nearly gave her whiplash from his previously sullen expression. Yeah? You're proud of me? Those boyish dimples flared her way, and Marinette knew it was too dangerous to try to take a sip. She'd play his game. Yeah, and so is she. Thank you, Marinette. He held her gaze, but his voice went low and rough and nearly melted her heart. Come on, then. She stood up and grabbed her cup in the pot. Time to put you to work. You can't put a leash on a cat, you know. Oh? Can't I? She put down her things and leaned over just enough to flick that bell of his. Times are changing, Cat Noir. Although, you're welcome to nope yourself out of the store at any time. Can't risk it, he said, catching her hand and drawing her knuckles to his lips. Can't have you running off to Ladybug and telling her I was a bad guest. Is this a cat and mouse game? Marinette managed to laugh, but felt panic rising. Had he figured it out? Was that the cause of this sudden anxiety? Or was it something else? Her fingers burned where he touched, even hotter than her cheeks minutes ago. For a wedding planner, she sure wasn't good with single men, despite her interactions with the best men that come and go during the final stages of her job. Only if you're my date for tomorrow. She snapped her hand back before thinking it through, shock rippling across her face before getting her eyebrows and mouth under control. What, did some lovely lady stand you up? Marinette tried to play it cool. Nah, I'd just rather not go stag if you're free. Goodness, her cat and his silver tongue. Then again, she didn't have any reason to refuse. And most importantly, he was her friend, her beloved partner. Sure, she said, clearing her throat and coughing into her fist. What's the attire? Think of a classy tea time. Rich housewife with florals in the garden, or red wine on the side with A-line cuts? If you're with me,
no one will care.
She had to restrain an eye roll. Okay, he wasn't as smooth as she initially thought. A line like that could make her laugh, but not in a good way, if she heard it in a movie. Okay, Superman.
I'm more of a Marvel character, actually.
You wish!
But there will be tea.
Oh, you were serious? He pressed his palms to the table and stood up, shaking it with his weight.
So, shall we get started?
I'm gonna put you to work, Catboy. Marinette set down her cup and joined him.
As long as you schedule me for cat naps, I'll be your best worker.
And here I thought I'd have to break out the nip.
Well, I'm not opposed.
He looked down at her, grinning, and her heart did a little flutter thing when she saw the dimples. Curse those dimples. Why couldn't he have had whiskers instead? Come on, top shelf is just for you. She grabbed a duster hanging on the wall and pressed it to his chest to make distance between them. Chop chop!
As you wish, princess.
He caught her hand, still on the duster, and pressed it closer to his chest. Oh, goodness. This heat. Marinette couldn't even come up with a witty retort to diffuse the mood. If it kept up like this, tomorrow's vaguely discussed date might just get her hopes up, even without the promise of tea. Thank you so much for listening. Chapter 3 is on the way. In the meantime, you can check out these other videos for more fanfiction, and if you're still listening, comment Blushing Marinette. Also, if you want to know what the soundtrack is, I do have the We Could Have Tea Together OST uploaded already. I will catch you in the next one. Bye!